Guys, Lord Axis here, bringing you a video that is long since overdue. First and foremost though, allow me to apologize for that. I haven't really been busy or anything. I've just been doing a whole ton of stuff, and I recently went and looked and was like, goodness, I haven't made a video on SAO for over a month, so that needs to be a thing that gets done. Though, what this is going to be is just my opinions and such on this game, on Fatal Bullet, and I'm not gonna lie to you, they're not good. Like, contrary to popular belief amongst anime stuff, I am not a blind fanboy who's going to follow anything despite how many flaws it has, and if you like the game, power to you. It's, at its core, I would say it's probably more or less fine. For me personally, it's just got one too many things that tend to add up and bog down the experience. And I'm not saying I expect it to be a perfect game. In fact, I feel like I like games that aren't perfect a little bit more because they bring discussion of what can be improved. That said, let's get into it. First, we're just going to start off with the things that I don't really care for. And, first and foremost will be the only thing I've made a video on this game on so far, and that's the character customization. Yeah, the first DLC pack will be adding new hairs, but that's just new hairs. Like, it's pretty barren. It's not as barren as Lost Song, but it might as well be, because, goodness gracious, it's just unacceptable how lacking this is. Like, you can't edit eyes and mouth further than anything else, and it's just kind of there. But for what it's worth, if I were to praise something right now, character weight does feel good, and I'll give it that. Though, before I go any further, let's take it back a notch before I get too sidetracked and actually get some structure to this. So, what I really don't seem to like about this game is, like I said, it's got a bunch of little things that just add up. We already covered real quick the character customization. Next is going to be those loading screens. For how long you're in the field, it's okay. However, once you go back into town, you gotta go to your room, then you gotta go to Kirito's room to upgrade equipment and do different things. They're a little bit too long for how often you're in them. And speaking of Kirito's room, that brings us to our next thing. Weapon upgrading in this game is not okay. Like, so for those of you out of the loop, the way handling weapons works in this game is just like most of the others. You've got your list, you've got your equipment. Problem is, most equipment does not have a unique name at all. So you've got a pistol equipped, it's going to be the name the same as every other pistol you have. And in order to upgrade it, you have to unequip that item. That's fine and all. Problem is, and expect there to be a lot of demonstrating to and comparing to Realization, because in my opinion, that is still the better game. In Realization, to upgrade a weapon, you simply took it to Lisbeth, selected it, and upgraded it. The catch here was, before I get into that, the reason this would work is you're just upgrading a weapon of the same values. The reason you had to unequip it to transform it was because once you did that, the weapon's ID would change and different things, so the game didn't want that equipped because that could potentially cause problems. Which is, like before, you could do it without removing it, but they patched that out because of said problems. This game, to simply even upgrade, you have to unequip that weapon. And that's annoying, because they're all named the same thing of the same weapon type, so if you have multiple, you're going to have to search and memorize by stats of what that was. And while it's not too much of a problem, like I said, it's a bunch of little things that add up. Then you have just a ton of things in general. Like, at least getting ammo isn't too much of a problem. It's like gas in Final Fantasy 15. You should never be starving for it. But, next point we're going to cover is the skills. If you haven't played this game yet, take your attention to the bottom right-hand corner. Those little octagons there, as soon as you push R1, that bracket goes down and covers them. You cannot use the skills until that is covered. Now, that's not too much of a problem when you're using a gun, but considering this is a sword art online game, you're obviously going to want to use the sword at some point or another. This is mainly a problem when it comes to the sword, because you've got your regular slashes, which do decent enough damage, but in order to use any skills, you have to highlight that, effectively putting half a second of input lag on you to an already thing that has a pretty hefty charge-up time. And then the game just straight up doesn't read correctly sometimes, as you just saw. I just backflipped, front flipped off of nothing, which obviously causes issues. And then my next point that lags into, I know this is a shooter. You're not supposed to have a lock-on of any kind. However, there are certain things that should at least have loose lock-on. Like the skill I just used is called Gun Stinger, and you just ram an enemy with it and it hits it. I have had on more than one occasion where I am no less than 2 inches away from an enemy, where I clearly should hit it, and it just flies on by. And that is 100% the game's fault. There is no reason that shouldn't hit. I was literally touching the enemy, and it just flies on by. And yeah, at this point, it sounds like I'm griping, so let's hit some positives. Like I already said, character weight does feel pretty nice. I like the fluidity of it. Your stats can mean something, like the higher you put your agility, the faster you're going to get back up to that running speed. And that's a nice touch. I like how your agility actually shows. Let's see. I know I had a few more. And I lost them. Oh, okay. There's one. Itsuki. I like Itsuki as a character. He's pretty decent. Yeah, I'm going to be straightforward with you guys. I have yet to beat this game, so my opinions may slightly change later. But as it is now, it feels like a chore to play this game for me, and that's something I don't like saying. But in the series that sadly adds more female characters than male, and is honestly getting to the point of being annoying, Itsuki was a good change to that. Yeah, they had Sumeragi and Genesis, but Genesis was a villain of the week, and Sumeragi was just kind of there. So Itsuki, good character. And on that note, let's move on to something else. The Avatar character. Now, I'm usually all for an Avatar character. However, in a series that's more narrative-driven, like Sword Art Online, he's out of place. Like, your character being the silent guy that he is just doesn't fit for me. And when you do have an option of selecting, you know, like 2 different things during a conversation or whatnot, 9 times out of 10 in this game, I have hated every possible option it gave you. The point of having a character is the character being you. So if it doesn't feel like something I would say or like to say, it can feel out of place. It's like Luger in Tales of Xillia 2. You don't put a silent character in a very talkative game. Just doesn't work. And while I understand that the character is there for setting up certain things, look at it this way. The previous games, with their better character customization, during story mode, the game still treated you as Kirito. But during anything else, you were your own guy. Like, that's how it worked. And that way, you could still have the freedom of the character customization, but you would still have the better narrative of the game that was better structured and not just kind of shoehorned together. And I know this one wasn't, but that's how it feels. And I think I'm going to put that one on dimps more than the game itself. But let's move on to our next point. So, back with how your character feels. Leveling does feel pretty nice. I will give it that. I can actively feel like I can see my attacks and skills getting better. However, on the defense side of things, like how many hits you can take, it still feels like Lost Song. I knew it would. I knew it would, and as you guys know, if you've watched any of my stuff, that is a problem. Lost Song was not a good game, in my opinion. It has aged very badly. The combat is kind of just there, and it just feels like you're gonna get slapped 6 or 7 more times, and that's never okay, at all. And if I were to praise one other thing, I was afraid that this game would have bland environments, and you could argue that it does. However, I do feel they filled them up pretty decently. So the world is at least interesting. You've got that, and the town, the Glocken, whatever it's called. Really nice. I liked it. However, that leads us into our next thing. Multiplayer in this game is not okay. If you guys remember, I went pretty in-depth into what I think a multiplayer should look like in one of these SAO games, which was a nice combination between Hollow Realization and Hollow Fragment straight-up mission select, with random missions still spawning in, but still allowing you to select a mission you have at least completed in single player for a guaranteed spawn of the Hollow... the event fragment. So they did give us that. However, the way Fatal Bullet handles its multiplayer is straight up, you just select a mission, and it's not even really a dungeon crawl. It's just beat up boss with party, get sent back out from party, and do it again. You don't get to keep experience. You do get weapons now, but that had to be patched into it. Before, it was just materials. That's all you got, was materials out of it. And even then, they weren't that great of materials. So that felt absolutely pointless. And yes, they have a PvP mode, but it is not balanced in any way, shape, or form. Realization attempted to put their dual mode in as a form of PvP, and then did constant adjustments to it with different skills working differently in the that mode than they did in the normal mode, which was necessary. Because if they just had all the skills work the same, it'd be over in about 0.5 seconds. Which, yeah, that's not okay. There's just too many things. But let's see. If we were to move on to another point that I would say is bad. AI. AI in this game is awful. Like, that's not even a lie. It is some of the worst I have seen ever. I am not a shooter fan. I am absolutely not a shooter fan. Which I've been trying not to let hinder my experience with this game. Like, I do enjoy this game's gameplay. I will give it that. The gameplay is solid. But I would like to demonstrate something to you here. We're gonna knock out this guy. And then we're just going to have an easy time taking out the rest of his squad, because he's gonna go, watch, he's gonna rush over, attempt to save him, completely unaware of his own peril, and just die. That happens all the time. It's not even just enemy AI. When you take out a squad, one member, they're all gonna rush over and try and save them, making them the easiest pickings ever. And this can apply to your AI as well. If I were to fall out in combat, Itsuki here is going to dodge roll 3 billion times until he gets near me, attempting not to take enemy fire while taking enemy fire anyway, until he gets me, inevitably dies, or revives me, and then immediately dies. This is polar opposites of what Hollow Realization was. Realization had an AI system that you could actively make smarter if you knew how. It could start out dumb as bricks and then become some of the scariest AI you could ever see if you knew how to handle it. It was actively impressive. This AI is not okay compared to that. The most they do is occasionally, oh look, I'm going to use this skill and heal you, and then miss. It's not okay. Like, yeah, this entire video sounds like a giant gripe, and I don't like that, because I'm normally a lot more chipper. That's what I try to be, is I don't like being a negative person, guys. This game just brings out the worst in me. But while on the tones of negative, you, Afreya system, I don't like you. You are the core source of a decent number of this. Your personality, I don't like your Afreya system's personality. I don't know if it changes if you set it as a male, but goodness, the airhead route? Why did you take the airhead route? I don't like that. I'm sure some people like that. I don't like that. And I feel like such crap with how negative I'm being, but goodness gracious, it's just not okay. And what you can do with the Afreya system, there are some pros in that. Some of the emotes and different multiplayer stuff you can do is interesting. That's probably one of the few highlights for multiplayer. But it's just, having an extra save thing for your money, there's no real point to it. Like, you get paid out the rear in this game. Every time you go back from the field, you get your bounty increases, and it does that. Which brings me to something I loosely touched on, which was progression. The way they handle your leveling in this game is flawed. While I liked the idea of being able to assign your stats individually, did come from the anime, and that was fantastic that they included this. It's very, very good that they did. It gives that freedom that the show said this game had. The act of not being able to level up until you get, until you get back to town is, I don't like it. Like, your leveling doesn't feel very impactful because of it. And then it brings back in one of my earlier gripes, is that the loading screens are long. If you weren't ready to go back from the field, but you feel like you need those levels you've earned because this thing is just killing you, you gotta go through a loading screen, assign your stats, likely buy some more ammo, do some stuff, and then go back again through that awful loading screen. It's really not okay. And then that brings us back to the Glocken. It's empty. Like, there's nothing to do there, really, at all. You upgrade equipment and you go back. And while, yes, the same could be said for the different places in Fragment and Realization, at least those were visually interesting instead of just streets you can't even go in. But I think that more or less touches on most of what I wanted to cover in a very, very, very unstructured way. That said, guys, I apologize. I have been out of it for so long that my structure for these videos has definitely taken some damage. And I don't want that to reflect the overall quality of this. But I did not like Fatal Bullet. It was just... There's too many things. Like, another thing I'll touch on here is what would have, going back to multiplayer, said they let it in an open structure. You know, you could just have, say, 16 randoms. Your bounty might actually mean something if another player kills you and could get your bounty. That'd be a nice touch. But, again, this game has a pretty bad habit of anything you think would be a good idea, they decide not to go with that idea. It's bad. It's really bad. And just, And if I were to give one small last gripe as I wrap this up, Realization allowed you to save when logging off. That was a thing. You can't do that in this one. But that said, this is where my overall rant and harsh opinions of this game ends. We're gonna have, so, you know, keep it real and keep it weird, guys. I apologize for this. I really wanted to like this game, but I couldn't. Though, for anyone who only cares about my SAO stuff, this is probably where you're going to want to stop watching. I'm going to go into something else here. With that said, channel plans are a mess. I've been doing a bunch of Monster Hunter stuff because that's been what's easy the past little bit. And not even really easy. I love Monster Hunters, so if you guys have been watching those, thank you. Like, I consider myself pretty witty, at least when I'm not being, you know, very harsh on opinions like this entire video was, which, just, again, bad feeling in my chest. I can't stand being negative. But I originally said in a previous video I had plans to start up another channel with a more review style thing. That was 100% underway until the high-end quality microphone I had bought was, discontinued, so that put a giant bullet in my progression. So as soon as that gets done, I will get that back up, and I will make another announcement video for the time. That said, if any of you guys are still here at this point, please, please, I implore you, what do you want to see out of SAO videos? Like, because of Fatal Bullet just being not to my liking, it's been hard to play it, it's been hard to make SAO videos. I've said before, I've covered a good majority of what I want to in Realization. I don't want to make videos that everyone else is making, like the how-to guides and do this. I try to be a little bit more unique when I do a guide, giving a visual example and more of trying to create a discussion out of it. because that's what's fun. It's cool. I like those discussions. It's what makes it fun. That said, guys, yeah, like, that's all I got. So as always, keep it real and keep it weird. Axis out, guys.